So for today's video, we're going to be making shepherd's pie. Well, not really. We're making cottage pie, but they're the exact same thing. The only difference is the meat. For a shepherd's pie, like the official definition is it's supposed to be lamb, and a cottage pie is beef. But it's the exact same cooking technique, the exact same tools, and you can do it with any type of ground meat. I've actually done it with buffalo, so I call that prairie pie. I've also done it with kangaroo. I call that one bush pie. It's all the exact same stuff that you're going to need. So let's start with the pot. We're going to be making some mashed potatoes. So you're going to need to strain that, and this one has a lid that comes with strainers on it. So that's what I'm going to be using. And if you don't have one of those, just add a colander to this list. You're going to need a pan, and for the cooking, you're going to need a spatula. For everything else, you're going to want a cutting board, a fork, a real sharp knife, a spoon, and a potato peeler. Now, you don't need to peel the potatoes, but they're going to be much smoother and cook more evenly later. They're going to go on top and get placed into an oven. So, I highly recommend it, but you don't need to do it. And what is going into the oven is this bad boy right here. This is a Corningware dish. Now you can use any type of oven-safe crockery, and it's not going in for very long. All it's really going to be doing is browning the top, and there will be a layer of mashed potatoes and then a layer of cheese. So you just want the cheese to melt and bubble and just get a little brown going. So that's all you're going to need for that. And it's also very easy to put that into the fridge when you're done, so that's a plus as well. Now that we've handled all that, let's talk about the ingredients. We're going to start out with olive oil because, we don't want things sticking to the pan. But that's why we have a red wine. We'll add that later for a flavoring and to deglaze if you get the little brown bit stuck to the bottom. The spices you're going to use on this one are oregano, rosemary, garlic, and some sort of an Italian blend. I have a garlic and herb out right now. And then you also can add some salt and some pepper if you'd like. I usually don't add salt just because my family's salt sensitive, but feel free to put that in to taste. And these are all going to be to taste. I don't put the measuring on here because if you don't like an ingredient, don't use it. If you love it, put a lot in. You really like rosemary? Put a ton in, especially if you're doing the shepherd's pie because rosemary and lamb are really good together. So the veggies that you're going to have are frozen peas, onions, carrots, zucchini, and mushrooms. And I know mushrooms aren't everyone's thing, so if you don't want to add those like anything else, you don't need to. I will be making a second video to show you a different way to do some mushrooms and put them on the side. So you can put them into the pie if you would like, or I'll have a couple different ways you can have it as a side dish. And we're doing the cottage pie today, so we're doing the lean ground beef. You're also going to want a can of gravy. I'm going with mushroom gravy, but if you don't like that, you can use whichever type you would like. If you're doing the mashed potatoes, you're going to want 3. You could probably get away with 2, but I'd rather have leftovers than not enough to cover the top later. You'll need some sort of dairy. I'm doing 2% reduced fat milk, but you can do anything from non-fat to cream, whatever you feel like. You're also going to need butter for this, and I'll show you how to do all those steps. But if you don't want to do those steps, you could just take one of these bad boys, pierce it with a fork. Well, wash it off first, then pierce it with a fork, put it in the microwave, open it up, and pour on top. Now, whether or not you're pouring it on top of a regular potato, or if you're doing into the oven, you're going to top everything with a mild cheddar cheese. Once again, if you like your cheese sharp, go ahead. I would recommend cheddar in particular. It goes really well with this. But if you're not a cheddar fan, you can try some of your other ones. I just wouldn't go with one of the smellier cheeses. I just don't think those flavors would go together. But, I could be wrong. If you want to try it, try it. That's kind of the whole point of these, is just learning how to cook and seeing the ways that you want to cook. So that being said, let's start to cook. So what you'd want to do when you're working on the potatoes is you cut them in half. And I've already processed everything. I'm just leaving this last bit. So you have half your potato after you've gone and peeled it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this half and you're going to cut it in half again. Then you're going to cut along like this. The key here is very small pieces. The smaller they are, the faster they cook and the easier they will be to mash later. Okay, once you have long, almost French fry style, you're going to go this way and just as even and as small as you can get it. Now the onion we had is pretty big, so you're probably only going to want to have half to a quarter, depending on how much onions you want in there. So you can do a couple things. You can cut it across like this. That makes it harder to cut later, in my opinion. You can cut along the way I did, going this way to have the bowl. But it really depends. Some people like the whole bulb, and that's why they like to do this. I'm going to show you on this one the reason I like going this way, and we'll get that started right now. Now, part of the problem with onions is trying to get it to stay together while you're cutting it. So the trick is go right to the edge. Don't go all the way. And when you're doing it, you want to angle it with each cut to go along with the contours. So if you don't go all the way to the end, it keeps the onion together better. And the reason that that's something you want to do is you can make the onion bits a lot smaller when you're trying to dice. And sometimes you do want large strips, but for this we want to dice it. So now that we've done that, we're going to go through, cut along this way. See how that holds together a lot better than if you cut through all the way? And we're getting nice small diced pieces. So just continue all the way to the end. Okay, so we have a couple things going on over here. On one burner, we have a pot of water. It's being brought up to a low boil right now. So I'm starting it off on high heat, and then I'm going to bring it down, and we're going to put the potatoes in that when it starts boiling. Now, some people put salt in it. That's not something I do, but feel free to do it if you want. And then we're also going to now start with the vegetables for our main part here. So we're going to put some olive oil and put the veggies in and start cooking that up. And then after we do that, we're going to chop up the zucchini. And what we're going to do with the veggies is you're going to have these going for about 2 to 3 minutes until the onions are translucent. So that's on a medium-high heat. If you want to lower it while you're working on the stuff, feel free to do that. You just don't want it to burn to the bottom. So now that we've got these bubbles going, we're going to move that heat down to about a 6 or a 7, somewhere in between. That's all we really need. We don't need a roaring boil. And then we're going to put the potatoes in. Now be very careful when you're doing this step because you can get splashes and that would burn. So I'd go ahead and put a few little ones in first, since it's a very heaping plate. Then carefully dump them in. Now once they're in, your temperature is going to come way down and you're going to start seeing different sorts of bubbles as the starch breaks through. So what you can do is you can take that spatula you were using and just start stirring this stuff around. You're going to let that come back up to a boil. You don't have to do much, just check it every now and then, make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. And this is going to cook for about 10 to 15 minutes or until you can pierce one of the potatoes with a knife without any problems. Okay, while your potatoes and your onions and carrots are going, we're going to go ahead and do the zucchini really quick. So first wash it off. You're going to want to take both ends off. Now if you want big chunks of zucchini, you can just do coins, go this way. I don't want that, so I'm going to cut this into fourths. So we're going to start here and just cut it in half. And then cut it in half again. And just start chopping pieces however big you want. If you want them smaller, you can go again in eighths, just cut the strip. But I like about this size, and these are already a little soft, so that's why we haven't added them yet. You don't want them to get mushy in the cook. This is also when you're going to cut up the mushrooms if you want to do that. I find it easiest to take the stem bit out, set those aside. And once again, however much you want. If you want them nice and chunky, you can do that. If you want them thin sliced, which is what I do, just go along like this. Then you can do the same with the stem. And if you wanted them chunkier, you could just do in quarters like this, or in eighths, you know, however much you want. It's all up to you at this point. So our potatoes have come up to a boil, and this is a trick that you can use with starches, because you can see those bubbles up on the top. That's the starch coming off of it, and that's when you get your spaghetti to boil over. It doesn't happen as much with potatoes, but just in case, a trick you can do is put a wooden spoon over the top. So what happens is if the bubbles rise and they hit the spoon, it breaks the surface tension, so it shouldn't boil over. But if you have it low enough in the pot, that shouldn't be a problem. I just do this just in case. And then over here, we've gone ahead and we've added the zucchini, and that's all come together. I've done this for another 2 minutes since the zucchini's been in here. And this is when we're going to add that red wine just to deglaze the bottom of the pan. You know, it'll give it a little extra flavor too. Now, this is where you would put the mushrooms in. And you got to remember, if you do put them in this, that they do something called sweating down. And that's where, after a little bit of cooking, they release their moisture. So it gets really wet and the mushrooms start getting smaller. So that's going to be a little soggy. So what we're going to do now is it's time to add the meat. We're still at the medium temperature. So the best way to do this is move the stuff to the side that's already cooked and make a little area in here. And then we're going to put some oil in, not too much. And if you have a fattier meat, we're doing the extra lean, so it's 96% fat-free. If you have a fattier one, like a 93 or it's an 89, I believe, you don't want to do that. You don't want to put any more oil in because it's going to be oily enough. So I'm going to go and grab the meat, and we're going to put it in here, and we're going to start breaking it up. I'm dropping the meat in now. Hear that nice sizzle? Then we're going to start just breaking this up. Now at this point, do not put the spatula into the potatoes. I know it's boiling, but you don't want to take any health and safety chances with that. So what you're going to just do is just keep breaking the meat up. That's the timer for the potatoes, so I'll show you that step in a second. But just start getting it brown on the bottom and start flipping it. Now, if you're worried about doing all this stuff at the same time, you can go ahead and lower the temperature on this, and that way you can go ahead and worry about the potatoes. But you got to check them first, so don't go straight to the next step. So go ahead and take your spoon, move it around, make sure there's nothing stuck to the bottom, get a few bits on here, and you see how easily that goes in? These are done. So what you're going to do now is drain them. You're going to put them back into the pot after you've strained them, and then we're going to start mashing them. At this point, your meat is almost done cooking. You can still see there's a little bit of pink, and that's when we want to add the spices. So first you're going to take your big teaspoon of garlic. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to throw in just a little extra because I like garlic. And then you're going to stir that up, and you want the garlic to cook for about 30 seconds. Just to mild out the flavor just a little bit, because you know garlic can be pretty pungent if it's raw. And after you do that for 30 seconds, that's when we're going to go in with our other spices. And it's going to be up to you how much you want to put in there. So we're going to go in with the oregano first. And it's a good flavor. Maybe a teaspoon worth. Just shake it in, get a nice coating. And then you're going to go and you're going to hit in with the rosemary. And you do want to crush it up a bit when you're going to stir it around in a second. And then go in with whatever your spice blend is. And if you're going to do pepper, this is when you would want to put that in too, however much you want. It's all up to you. This is your show. You're just going to incorporate all this stuff together. Once you have it nice and distributed, go ahead and kind of smash this down so you have good contact with the pan. Right now we have it on medium heat. We're going to go ahead and lower that. My kitchen assistant is whining at the moment. I think she's saying she's hungry. She smells it. So we're just going to let this mellow for a second, and we're also going to add the gravy at this point. And then in with the gravy. Make sure you scrape out all the little bits. You want all that goodness. Now you're going to stir that around. And when you're doing these pies, you want them to be pretty thick. So you want to go ahead and just mix this. Let all those flavors come together. Oh, she's hungry. She's a hungry girl. Aren't you, Snow? Here's my cute assistant. Hi, Snow. Yes, you smell it. Oh, here's my other assistant. And then you can go ahead and turn the heat off at this point and just let the residual heat deal with that. And now we're going to move over to the mashed potatoes. Okay, we have now drained the potatoes, so we're going to go and turn those into mash, and we're just letting this one sit for a little while. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your butter, and as you can see, if it'll focus, you have a tablespoon measure here. There we go. So we're going to start out with 2. Now, if you want to do healthier, you can use margarine, or you can use less. We're going to start with 2 and go from there. So go ahead and you're going to take a knife and you're just going to press in there so you have a little line. Then you go ahead and peel. Now this has been sitting out, so it's a bit softer, and you do want it softer if you're going to work with the mashed potatoes, because if it's harder, it's not going to incorporate as well. So go ahead and drop that in there. And then you're going to take your masher, and you will be adding milk, just so you know, but we're going to just start, and you see how we cooked those pretty well, so they're just coming through. And you're going to just move it around and get the butter to start melting. Now we're not adding the milk quite yet, because we want to get this nice and buttery. So go ahead and you can mash it, and then you can stir it like I'm doing. Now this is dry, and you're going to want smooth mashed potatoes. So that's when we're going to start adding the milk, because as you can see, most of the chunks are pretty small. They're getting smushed up, but they're not smooth. Now, once again, if you want to do healthier, you can use a lower fat milk, but I didn't want to get a full milk, so I got this one. It's 2% reduced fat. So we're just going to start little by little, because you don't want them runny either. So what we're going to do is just add some, not too much. We're going to start smashing and moving around again. And you can see it's already a little bit smoother. My little Bob Ross cooking impression there. Okay, that wasn't enough, so we're going to add some more. And you're just going to keep doing this until you get to the consistency that you want. Like I said, you don't want it runny, but you do want it smooth, and we're getting close. Now, something you can do at this point, if you want, is if you like garlic mashed potatoes, you can put some garlic powder in. You can also add some pepper and some salt, or you can do that later. If you want to do any sort of a fancy mashed potato, this is the point to put that stuff in, whether it's rosemary, other herbs, like I said, garlic, whichever one you want. Now, it's almost there. I want it just a little bit smoother, so we're just going to go. That's it. Now for what we're going to do, you don't want it too much smoother than this, because you're going to be spreading it over. So you want it to have some body to it. So you can see it's not quite smooth. If you want smooth mashed potatoes, you just keep on with this process. Like I said, we want it just a little bit thick for what we're going to do, we're going to take some cording-ware. We're going to put this into at the bottom, this on top, and then we're going to put it into an oven. Now you can do a regular oven or you can do an air fryer. That's what I'm going to do. And you want to preset that for about 350, 375 degrees. And we're going to put it in for roughly 10 minutes. But what you want to make sure you do is not let it burn. Now, if you don't have a potato masher, you can still make the mashed potatoes. You just got to do it a little differently. So you don't want to be using metal tools when you're in your pots because you don't want to scrape and scratch the bottom. And if you have non-stick, that's a whole other thing. So I say move them to a different bowl. And this is where your fork and your spoon are going to come in. So you're going to put the butter in, like in the other version. And you're just going to start smashing down with the spoon. You want to try to incorporate as much of the butter as you can, and it should start melting along the way. So it's getting not a great consistency yet, but we still have to add the milk. So just do this until you work that butter in. Now before you're going to add the milk, you're going to take the fork and you're going to kind of fluff it up. Just breaking it up so that the milk can get into it easier and get into all the different areas. Because when you're mashing it down, sometimes the milk doesn't get passed into the potato. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. It makes it harder to mash. So we're going to add the milk. Start again with the spoon. You can see already much creamier. You see how the milk's not quite getting in there? That's what I meant by moving it around so it can get in there better. And we're definitely going to need some more milk, so we're going to do that first, but then you're going to go back to the fork and you're going to kind of do the spiral motion. So you're moving it around, you're getting the milk incorporated in there, and you're also getting rid of some of the lumps. And that's much, much closer to what we want. Not quite there yet, it's still a little chunky. But at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to take this fork or the spoon, whichever you like better. Doesn't really matter, and you're going to just keep pushing along to the sides. This is going to get out any of those extra lumps that you had in there. And just like the other one, if you want to make this fancy, you can add spices to it. If you would like to keep it as is to go on the top of the pie, you can do that too. So you can see pretty much there. I'm going to do just a little more milk. Like I said before, you don't want to have it too loose or else it's going to fall apart when you try to pull the shepherd's pie out. And we're going to call this done. I'm just going to work on the lumps, but there you go. That's how you do mashed potatoes if you don't have a potato masher. Okay, so this is where it turns into a pie. So if you want to just have the filling over a baked potato, that's great. I love it. That's what I normally do because I like to cook more simply. So if you do that, just put some cheese over it, you're good. If you want to do the true pie, which has to have a top, that's kind of a definition, you're going to take an oven-safe deep dish like this, and you're going to put our filling into it. Now, you can spray it down, if you would like, with some oil or Pam, or you can butter it if you want. It really shouldn't stick, but just in case, we'll do a little of that. And then just in we go. You want to do all of it. Now that it's in there, you're going to want to spread it out evenly, get all the way to the sides. Push it down, give it a little firmness for later. And this is where the mashed potatoes are going to come in. You're going to put a big heap in there, and you're going to start moving it all around. You want to coat the entire top as evenly as possible. Go over to the edges. Push it up as much as you can. You want it to be smooth if you can help it. And I had a little oopsie, so I had to take the mashed potatoes off to refilm it, in case you're wondering what that stuff is. But that's fine, that just means that you'll have some of the meatiness in the mashed potatoes itself. So, once you have it all nice and smooth on the top, you're going to take your cheddar cheese, and you're going to sprinkle that on top, as much or as little as you want. I like to get a decent handful. Just move it around. You want to try to coat as much of it as you can, but if you don't like a lot of cheese, add less. It's up to you. That's what cooking is about, is making the food that you like and the people that you like to eat with like. All right, so now that we have that done, we're going to put it into the air fryer for 10 minutes, and we're going to check it after 5. We don't want it to burn since everything's already cooked. We just want it to start doing a nice melt and getting a little brown on the top. After 10 minutes, that's what it's going to look like. You're going to start getting a little bit of brown crust on there. And then what we're going to do now, because it's almost all the way done, is we're just going to put it on broil. And I'm going to do it for 1.5 minutes, but watch this like a hawk because it goes from golden brown to burnt real quick. So we've taken it out of the oven, and as you can see, it's nice and brown, but not burnt. So definitely make sure that you're checking on the broil. And like an idiot, I forgot the peas. So I just microwave those and we're going to put them on the side. So we're going to plate it up. So you're going to hold the side. You're just going to make a little square here. Get underneath. Move the plate. Try not to spill as much as I just did. I have screwed this up, but oh well. Cleaning. Going to dump your peas. And you're ready to go. So we're going to call that last section what not to do. So this time we're going to be smarter and we're going to cut into it just like before. But instead of trying to get the spatula, we're going to take a spoon. And that's how you should actually do it. So let's call that last one a lesson on what not to do. And then you're going to add the peas again. And there you go.